What you're seeing before you is the Immortal Incinerator Chronomancer character for Path of Exile 2. Now, this is probably the most unique and fun playstyle that I've ever played, and played a lot of different builds in this game. This one takes the cake. Yes, it is slow, but just look at it. This build absolutely just bullies everything. The guy can't move, and it uses nothing. The budget for this build is under 10 divines, at most 20 if you count the boots and the gloves with extra sockets and the socket effect. But if you don't count those and you don't even need those, essentially, that's just an upgrade. You still get this level of tankiness, which is just absurd. Like, no other build can do this while also being able to dish out incredible damage, both for single target, for mapping. It's just smooth all around. Ever since I swapped over to this, I've just never died. It just made PoE 2 fun again because I just hate dying. Dying sucks, and not doing enough damage sucks. So this build fixes both of that while being super cheap. No more spending hundreds of divines on your bows, on your amulets, and then when it comes time to deal the damage, you cast your stuff, you freeze the boss, he's done, and then you just burn. Beautiful red flames, random bug where no more comets fall, and then 22 million damage just like that. And you still tank whatever he throws at you anyway. So if this build interests you and you want to know everything about it, in this video I will cover all the skills, the gear, the pageantry, the jewels, as well as how to craft the wand and the focus and the amulet. So without further ado, let's get into this. Most fun builds I've ever played in Path of Exile 2. And honestly, I was really sick of the game. The game's endgame felt really boring. The build diversity was non-existent. Everything was either just some sort of spark build or some sort of bow build or an hollow palm monk. It all really just sucked. But then I saw some Chronomancer recoup stuff that people were doing on the very high expensive end with cold recoup. And I thought to myself, hey, not dying is fun, being immortal is fun, but spending hundreds of divines trying to get there is not fun. So how do I take the recoup base and how do I slam it into something that is very cheap to get going and is just a very unique and different playstyle as compared to every single other thing in the game currently? And that's how I came up with the Immortal Incinerate Chronomancer. So I'll first go over the actual skills and how the whole thing functions, because it is very different to how any other skill plays in the game, and it all works around Incinerate. So this skill has no mana cost. It instead gets fuel by spending mana on different abilities. Right, so it says here, it gains fuel by spending mana on any skill, and then use the accumulated fuel to conjure a torrent of fire from your blah blah blah, igniting enemies in front of you. The flames grow stronger the longer you channel, and it consumes a fire infusion to create ignited ground, and that ignited ground does do a decent amount of damage as well. So the main thing here is you gain fuel by spending mana on other skills, and you get 30% more damage per stage, and it's up to 12 maximum stages. That is 360% more damage at maximum stages. And the baseline damage of this is quite high. It's 1,000 to 1,500 fire damage. So that's huge. And the Igniter Ground also does a pretty decent chunk if you do have a fire infusion. So that's basically it. So how do we actually generate the mana to do this? So if I use something like a Frost Bomb, right, I spend this much mana, and you can see here on the Incinerate bar, I generated about a quarter of fuel, right? So that's not going to be enough. You don't want to spam like 50,000 abilities, or at least like 12 abilities to be able to get full mana, full fuel for you to use your Incinerate. Because if I use this right now, that's it. Like, that's nothing. You can't just use like 2 seconds or a second worth of fuel in maps. That's not going to feel good. So how do we fix that? Well, we fix that by using two different things. So the first one is going to be a cast on elemental ailment setup. So this is a meta gem that basically just triggers everything inside of it whenever you gain a certain amount of energy by applying ailments. And Incinerate is constantly applying ignites with every single tick, which is really, really potent. It gives a lot of cast on ailment energy. Now, you could also do this with cast on crit. Same thing, but with crit, it is harder to get crit in a relatively easy way. So I chose to use cast on ailment. If you can get enough crit chance, maybe if you want to do this on a blood mage and get rid of the recoup setup and use the blood mage's expensive setup instead, you can do that. But for Chronomancer, with all the very cheap, easy access to immortality that this Ascendancy brings, Cast on Ailment is just the way to go. So when these big mana cost abilities inside Cast on Ailment proc, so that's Comet and the Living Bomb, this is 308 mana cost, this is 238 mana cost. So as you're mapping around, every single time this triggers, it gives you a bunch more fuel to use for your Incinerate. So that's really nice. So besides that, when you are not triggering this, because obviously triggering any sort of trigger gem on white mobs or blue mobs is not easy. They nerfed that like 2 leagues ago. So what do you do then? So the other way we gain fuel for Incinerate is by using a very big curse. So curses, by default, usually have a very high mana cost compared to just regular skills. On top of that, if you add any sort of mana multiplier on them, then it's even more mana cost, obviously. And then if you scale the level of that curse super high, it will be even more mana costs. So currently, Elemental Weakness in my offhand is level 27, and that costs 467 mana. So if I use this once, that's roughly 40% of my total mana, and that gives me roughly 24%-ish fuel for Incinerate. Now, obviously, that is still not enough, right? Because if I use this right now, it's still like around 3 seconds of use. It's not enough. But that is where the Chronomancer Ascendancy comes into play. So whenever you start a map, you start right here, you will cast Elemental Weakness twice, boom, boom. Then you will use Temporal Rift. This will give you back all of your mana. Then you cast it twice again, use Temporal Rift again, cast it one more time to get that final bit, and now you start the map with full fuel for Incinerate. And the full fuel looks like this. You can just keep on using it. There you saw the big burst, that's it reaching 12 stacks, and then you can just keep on going with this for quite a while before that goes out. And while you're using that Incinerate, you will hopefully be proccing your cast on ailments, and those comets and those living bombs will then further give you more energy, and you will keep on getting more fuel for more smoothness. Okay, that will be the overall start of the map. However, it is still not exactly perfect. It will take some getting used to, because even if you start the map by doing this, right? Start the map, you get all your fuel. That part is super smooth. But you can't obviously do that in the middle of every map, right? You can't just stop, do that. That'll just feel super clunky and not super fun. For that, there are 2 other things that will be utilized. So the first thing is Flameblast. So this is an ability that essentially sucks out all of your mana to give you this channeling, and then you blow everything up, and it does quite a large chunk of damage, again, based on how long you channel it. Good damage, even has a cooldown because of how much damage this ability does. I wish it didn't have a cooldown because it's super badass, and I wish I could have built around this, but anyway. So that is the other way you get fuel. So if I just burn all my fuel real quick. Alright, so, and now if I use Flameblast, you'll see, look at that fuel, look at that fuel, look at that fuel. That gave me around 60%, you can't see it behind the icon here, but it's around 60% of fuel. Right, so the difference between using Elemental Weakness to get your fuel versus Flameblast is Flameblast actually does damage, right? So when you're running around and you see a large pack and you don't have enough fuel at the moment, it's just super smooth. Just walk into that pack with Flameblast, pop it, and that'll give you a bunch of fuel. And Flameblast, by the way, is guaranteed to trigger your elemental weakness. Because of how much damage this thing does, it says here, this does. So that is it for the skills that allow you to use Incinerate, right? Incinerate uses fuel, gets fuel by spending mana. You get mana by charging it up at the beginning of the map with elemental weakness and temporal rift. And then as you go into the map, you will just use Flameblast if you ever feel like you ran out of fuel. And if not, you will just be using your cast on ailment to get energy for your Incinerate instead. And then the other thing would be that you will also, while there are no packs in front of you, you will just be casting elemental weakness as you're going, right? So if there's a pack over here, you kill that pack, you go over to the next pack, you just cast elemental weakness once in between packs just to get a bit more fuel ready for the next pack. That will also make it super smooth. You can either do that or you can just use Flame Blast when you reach the next pack. It's up to you. For me, I sort of got used to killing one pack over here, walking on over to the next one, casting 2 elemental weaknesses in between, and that's usually good enough for me to keep on using Incinerate for the entire map. Super smooth. Who is that? Okay. So anyway, that's it for the Incinerate setup. What about the rest? Well, we have Blasphemy with Temporal Chains. This is just to super slow the enemies around you, combined with the Chronomancer Ascendancy that also slows things around you. This is how we get that super giga slow on everything around us, making it super easy to just sprint around, not take much damage, even if you're standing in the middle of everything. It's super nice. Combined with that, we have Temp Chains. This and this do not stack, right? So if I use my normal cast Temp Chains, which is only for bosses, this and this actually do not work together. So if Blasphemy is on, it will actually overwrite your Temp Chains. So if you know, Blasphemy has an innate thing, it actually reduces the effect of curses that it has inside of it as sort of a balanced thing because you have this curse on permanently. So if you use Temp Chains, this is supposed to slow enemies by around, if I look here, I think it's like 144%, right? That's the curse. But the Blasphemy one slows them by 75%. So if I find a monster in the map over here, so these guys are 75% slow right now. If I use Temp Chains, the curse itself on the ground, you can see it does nothing. It's still 75%. If I turn this off, then I use Temp Chains, then the slow goes up to 140%. To get this off my face. And hey, you saw that? A bunch of white mobs and cast on elemental ailment procced on them just because I used Flame Blast. But anyway, so that is why when you're going for the kill on Pinnacle bosses, or even like some of the new, very tanky, supposedly powerful map bosses, you want to turn Blasphemy off and manually use your Temp Chains instead. Now, there is a limit to how slow you can make monsters, and that limit is actually going to be 75%. This is for all monsters in any area. Their speed cannot be lowered below 75. Now you're going to say, okay, well then why are we turning Blasphemy off? Why can't we just use that? Because that is already up to 75% anyway over here. Well, that is because that is for white monsters. Okay, so if you don't know, curses, all sorts of curses and slows and debuffs affect normal monsters, magic monsters, rare monsters, and unique monsters differently. So, white mobs get the full effect, no difference. Blue get 15% less, rares get 30% less, and uniques get a whole 50% less. That's why this white mob, if I turn this on, it's not even going to do anything. But if this was a magic monster, this slow would be around 50%, and this was a unique, it would be all the way down to like 14%, which is super not slow. But if I was to use my Temp Chains, then it would be up to a 30%-ish slow on unique, so that's really good. Besides that, it's just Mana Remnants and Siphon Elements. Siphon Elements just gives you a Fire Remnant for you to be able to use with Incinerate, as well as for it to be consumed by the Comet. This also has a Fire Infused version for extra damage. Mana Remnants gives you a lot of mana. We are using Remnant Potency with this, so this activates 3 seconds later, but it gives you way more mana. And since Mana Remnants can overcap you on mana, so getting more mana is very nice. And then finally we have Frostbomb. This is just for, like, only for Pinnacle bosses, honestly. I never use this for anything else anyway. and then this just applies super exposure. We have this with Spell Echo and Overabundance, so that makes it so you cast 2 bombs, and then these 2 bombs both blow up. So you can see here the exposure goes up to like 69% exposure, which is massive. Combine that with Elemental Weakness, that is another 123% negative res. Now this obviously won't be that potent on uniques, but you already saw the unique footage in the showcase, so you already know it's very nice. We also have our Ascendancy Skills, so Temporal Rift and Time Freeze. Now, Time Freeze, very important. You have to use this with your offhand, okay? Because if you see here, duration of Time Freeze is 8.76 in the offhand and 4 seconds in the main hand. So 4 seconds is usually enough for any sort of map boss, but for Pinnacle bosses, you want to use your curses with your offhand and your Frost Bomb with your offhand, and then when you are ready, when you want to start doing your DPS, then you press Time Freeze with your offhand, and then you start using Incinerate, and that is how you will get your maximum effect Time Freeze. So that's very important. Temporal Rift doesn't matter if you use it with offhand or main hand, it's the same thing. It just gives you back all of your life, mana, and energy shield that you had at a specific point at the oldest after image that you had. Okay, very important. So if you see here, I'm going to be leaving these after images behind. You can't really see them because my graphic quality is super low. I apologize. But you can see here that I'm leaving these images, and if I spend some, if I spend mana over here, and I go walking around, and if I use this now, it'll actually put me back to when I actually spent that mana. So you have to be careful how you're using that. So if I spend mana now and I do this, it's fine, but do be a little bit careful of that. So yeah, ideally, there's not much thought to put into this. Like when I play the game, I rarely use this to regain life or ES. I only do this to get back my mana at the beginning of the map, and that's basically it. Volatile Dead, you can ignore all of these, none of these are relevant. Chisel of Power, this just gives you a massive damage boost for a single target. If you need it for any sort of map boss, powerful map boss, pinnacle boss, just slam this down. Increase cast speed, all that good stuff. For these support gems, I don't think I need to explain any of them. They're pretty straightforward. It's just damage while channeling, more ignite damage, more damage, and mobility. This is to be used with the mapping setup that you move faster while you're using Incinerate, because if you do not have that, you are insanely slow while using this. So that's pretty important to use. And then ailment is just increase energy, damage, links, curse effect, AoE, stuff like that. Slow magnitude, mana cost, curse stuff, elemental weakness, more curse stuff, remnant potency, harmonic remnants, all simple stuff. I don't think this needs to be explained. Alright, now I'm going to quickly walk you guys through the actual playstyle and how the build actually feels. But first, a very important thing to note is with Incinerate, there is a bug that I hope the GG fixes because it's quite annoying. But if you see here, like, these are white bombs, right? I have so much damage. The moment my Incinerate touches these guys, they should evaporate. Right? But if I do this, right, it killed that guy, it did not kill this guy. Or, like, it should have, but it didn't. Right? So if I do this again, it takes a while before Incinerate actually starts doing damage. As you saw there, I don't really know why, but sometimes it just doesn't hit properly if things are right in front of you until it gets some stages. So that can make it feel a little bit awkward sometimes. If something is right in your face, it's easy to just move backwards and blast them with flame instead. That usually does the trick. But anyway, with that being said, now we can actually show how the build feels. So most of the time, I don't really bother with killing any sort of white monsters because they don't drop any loot. They're super slow and easy to walk right past or sprint right past, as you saw in the showcase. But as you saw in the showcase, and then when I reach a rare monster, I just burn them down, and then I go next. I do try to keep my staff out in my hand as I'm running around because this does have increased curse magnitude from the passive tree, and increased curse magnitude gives you bigger slows on the rares. And as you saw there, every single time I kill a rare, I just use elemental weakness to swap back over to the staff, and then I start running. Elemental weakness gives me more fuel for the next monster, and swapping over the staff gives me, well, the staff in my hand to be able to go through everything. Now, a good point to mention, there's a lot of monsters here. Right now, I can't really run past these guys. I would have to dodge roll a little bit, but I can get stuck. Right? If I do get stuck, that is when you either use Flameblast to burn your way through, which you can do, it's pretty smooth, or what I would rather you do is just tap Flameblast a bit, charge that much, and pop. Like that will clear everything around you pretty easily, and that'll be done. And if you ever find a monolith like this, it's super smooth. You just hold down your flame incinerate before they even show up, and then they just bye. Right? And this is a fully juiced up map, by the way. Hey, good chaos. This is a fully juiced up map, by the way, with all the mods. Not a lot of tablet stuff, but all the mods, extra damage is chaos, minus max res, crit, all that stuff, and I'm still just obliterating stuff. That's basically the playstyle that you will have. You'll walk through, you'll burn stuff with Incinerate if you are blocked, or you just Flame Blast stuff if you are blocked. Same thing. Clears everything through and you just walk past. Right? For ritual stuff, or for any sort of mechanic that requires standing, I recommend just get into a corner and start blasting. Right? You can see here, I'm using my Incinerate, my castle aimer is proccing, it's giving me more fuel, and letting me use Incinerate even more. Now, I'm going to skip the rest of the map here because PoE 2 maps are super long, and we'll go straight over to the final boss, and I can show what to do when you reach that point. So I actually found a lightless void, so I'm actually going to show how this looks in the abyssal pits as well, because I find this build to be super nice for abyssal pits because you can not die to anything here, and you don't want to kill anything down here either, right? All these monsters have no extra quant, no extra anything. You only want to kill the rares because they can drop special omens, but otherwise this is the perfect spot to just run right past everything, straight to the end, so that feels super nice. Just look at me. And I'm already at the boss, see? So now this boss will have no HP, like these guys are basically made of paper, and you'll see right here, I will just incinerate this guy. Just need to get to max stages, and he just disappears. Thank you, bye-bye. Okay, here we are, we're at the boss, and it's time to actually talk about single target setup. So, usually, you will have to swap to a different helmet and a different skill gem that I forgot to bring here, but that's only for like tier 3 max difficulty pinnacle bosses. This does not count as that. These are relatively pretty easy to kill. So for that, you won't really be doing anything. However, what you do want to do though, is make sure you're at max fuel, because that's important. Make sure you cast your elemental weakness and your sigil of power. That's it. So here, start the boss fight. Sigil of power, elemental weakness, temp chains, turn your blasphemy off just to show how the slow feel. 36%. Look at this guy. Look at him. Can't do anything. But yeah, that's just to bully him. But if you don't want to bully him, then sigil of power again, all that, and then you time freeze. And then you just hold down left click, and while you're holding down left click, you actually do want to tap your instant mana flask. Okay, that is going to be important because you don't really have the mana to sustain the cast all ailments constantly proccing. Even though you do get mana remnants, that is not enough. And for phase bosses, you just time freeze once they're done phasing, and then you just kill them again. Super easy, super smooth. Like, you don't really even need all this life in AS for how easy it is to kill these bosses. Like, it's so easy. But yeah, there you go. Good stuff, good loot, and that's basically the playstyle. And now, what's in my ritual altar? Ooh, a whittling omen. Defer that for next year. Alright, so now that we're out of the map, I can actually raise my graphic quality back up because yikes. So, now we've already talked over all the skill gems, how it all works, how the playstyle works. Now we're going to talk about the gear, because the gear for this build is so cheap. It's unbelievable. So, what is the gear? Let's start with the wand and the focus, because this is like where most of the damage comes from, right? So, the wand is a +5 fire spell wand. Don't worry, this is not extremely expensive. It's actually super cheap because of how common these wands are, because of how many people were playing the fireball build before. So, +5 fire skills, tier 2 crit, tier 3 cast speed, tier 3 spell damage. This is fully just a random wand that you use, and you saw how much damage this was doing. Like, all the showcases, all the pinnacle bosses were killed using this wand and this focus and all of this gear, except for the boots and the gloves, and I'll talk about that in a minute. So this, I will show exactly how to craft this. It's super deterministic. It costs you way under a div, like barely like 100 to 200 eggs, I think, to craft this. So super easy. Same thing with the focus. This is also super deterministic and easy to craft. You do want to have a resistance on this, and that is the part which is a little bit RNG. You can probably even go buy this for how stupendously easy this is to just make and use. Okay, now I am doing this on a 2-socket focus, and don't worry, those are also not expensive at all. Those are also super cheap. So that's the focus. Just spell damage, fire damage, spell skills, and resistances, along with a good roll of energy shield on the prefix. And cast speed isn't really that relevant. Like, Incinerate does not benefit from cast speed, but the curses that you're casting in between packs does benefit from cast speed, so it is nice to have cast speed for that purpose. So then we have the amulets. Now this is the only piece that is actually a little bit expensive. The base for this will cost you around like 1 to 2 divs, maybe. Like, I will price check and I'll have a thing on the screen right now. That is how much it will cost you. And then on top of that, the crafting itself, the materials that you'll use to craft this will be 1 perfect exalt. So whatever the price of that at the time of recording this and uploading this and whatever, whenever you're watching this is, you will need one of those to get +3 level of all spell skills. So that will hurt a tiny bit. But again, this is the only thing that you're going to be spending anything on. The rest of the gear is literally free. Okay, so this is super deterministic to craft again, but the damage taken recoup is the only thing that is not deterministic. That is RNG. If you do fracture your spell skills, then it's super deterministic. But if you miss the fracture on that, then it is a bit hard. Don't worry, I will have a craft showcasing how to make this in the end, so you can see and hear me talk about it more then. Besides that, we have the helmet, the body armor, the belt, and the ring. Now these are all non-negotiable, they're uniques, and you need to use them. So for the helmet, we have 2 different helmets that you're going to be using. So the Adiri's Disdain, super cheap helmet, just get one with 2 sockets. This gives you 10% damage taken by past ES, so it hits your life, and then you benefit from both life recoup and ES recoup at the same time. It essentially serves as 10% damage reduction. Think of it as sort of the Lich Ascendancy, because you have so much recoup that your life can't really change because of how fast you recoup it. So think of it as that, and gain 15% of max life as extra ES. You can see here I go from 6,400 ES to 8,050, so that is a lot of ES coming from this one helmet. And the 2 runes will be 2 soul cores of Esta Zunti, which is damage recoup. And the other helmet is a Sandstone Visage. Now this applies blind to nearby enemies, and this also makes those nearby enemies get critical weakness per second. This is very nice. This combined with blindside support in your Incinerate in place of mobility. Right here, you take this out, you put this in, this gives you a massive amount of damage with 15% more crit chance and more crit damage plus the crit weakness. It's super potent. So the way you use this helmet is only going to be on pinnacle bosses. You put it on and then you go in there. You don't need the extra recoup because the boss isn't going to be hitting you that much anyway. And then you will wait. You will wait a few seconds for that crit weakness to reach 10. When you see 10 crit weakness on the boss, that's when you should start attacking and burning and killing them. That'll just maximize your DPS. You don't have to do this for most of the bosses. I would only recommend doing this on the Arbiter of Ash, because he is probably the tankiest one out of them all. But yeah, And then the soul cores here are talismans of Egrin. These give you enemies you curse take 5% increased damage. So 2 of those. Again, 2 socket helmet. Not super expensive at all. Very affordable. Try to get this with extra ES on the roll if you can. But again, no boss will ever hit you anyway because of time freeze. So that's kind of irrelevant anyway. But that's it for that. There's also one jewel here that I should mention along with the helmet. This jewel, you just place this in place of your weakest jewel on the passive tree because you just get Archon of Flame, which gives you 25% more fire damage. Really good. Again, just for Pinnacles, never for basically anything else. So, he said. Now, body armor. Now, this is the core of the build. You can't replace this. This is the way the build functions. This, even though it has garbage armor, garbage ES, some spirit, some random attributes, a little bit of chaos res. The main thing we see here is damage taken recouped as life is also recouped as ES. Sorry if you hear the ambulance outside, someone died. Alright, rest in peace that guy. But anyway, so this is how all the damage that we take is recouped as life and ES. That is how we get those insane recoup numbers. Without this body armor, having all this ES would be irrelevant because you'll just get hit through the ES and then you'll have to rely on this tiny little itty bitty life pool. And you already know you can't scale life, but you can scale ES. And this basically just removes the ES recharge conundrum. You don't need ES recharge at all. My delay is 5 seconds because you just take a hit and we have so much recoup that hit just doesn't do anything at all. It just doesn't. Right, it's up to like 147 again. So when you take a hit, this basically heals you for more damage than that hit is going to deal to you. So pretty damn nice. So get this with as much chaos res and ES as you can. The damage taken recouped as life is good. Try to get this with as much armor and ES, chaos res as you can. The damage taken recoup, while it is good, it's not necessary because we get so much of it from other sources on the tree anyway. And also try to get this on a 3-socket base, corrupted. Again, there shouldn't be too expensive. There'll be like 80 to like 150 eggs, which is not that much. Okay, but do make sure that the implicit on this is 30 spirit, and I'll talk about why later on, but try to get a 30 spirit one, please. So next we have the belt. Super simple. This is just a Doctor's Enthroned with gloves as its type and just as much socket effect as you can. And now there are breakpoints to this increased effect of socketed items. So 108 is the breakpoint to go from 60% to 62%. And then there's 94%, I believe, or 93%. That makes it go from 60 to 59% and so on and so forth. I like 108 is the good middle area on budget, but if you can't afford 108, then go for 100. If you can't afford 100, then go for 93. But 93 should be like barely a few exalts, so that's pretty cheap. And then we have the ring. I'm sure you've already seen this ring being used by a lot of different builds. It just gives you a bunch crit chance, crit damage, some chaos res, and the increased mana cost of skills actually helps with our element weakness costing more so that we can get more fuel from the 2 casts. The other ring is just resistances. Get as many resistances as you can on this ring. Now, you can obviously try to craft this yourself, but I'm not really going to recommend trying to craft this because these res rings are so insanely common on trade. Just go buy them. They're going to be way cheaper to buy because these kinds of rings, you can obviously more often just find these on the ground with a bunch of res and just use that. Find one with res, buy it, quality it, and hopefully get one with increased fire damage on the prefix, and rarity is also another good prefix. Life and flat mana are also nice, but try to focus on fire damage and rarity. Then we have the gloves and the boots. Now these are a little bit special. Now for the boots, obviously these are 2-socket tier 1 ES boots with good rest. Now, these are obviously going to be way out of budget, right? And I didn't use this for the showcase anyway. So you will just go and grab any boot, any ES boots with some movement speed and resistances, and that's it. And get one socket, put increased speed of recoup in that one socket, and you're good to go. And use these as a reference point on what to eventually upgrade your boots to. Because these boots, these ES boots with socket effect, can be used by like 1,000 different builds. So use these, and when you're done with the build, you can either sell them to someone else or use it in another build. It's up to you. Same thing with the gloves. These are increased effect of socket item gloves with good defenses on the prefixes. Now, again, you can just go buy a non-increased effect of socket item glove with good ES and just use that. It's up to you. Crafting the gloves is nearly impossible. Okay, I would highly recommend to just go and buy the gloves instead, because most people don't want defenses on their glove, they want flat damage. So whenever someone makes an increased effective socketed item glove and they somehow brick it with defense on their prefix instead of flat damage, they will often sell it for way cheaper than how much it would cost you to actually craft that yourself. Okay, so these gloves, I did not craft them, I bought them for 6 div. Right, 6 div. Like, that's super, super cheap compared to how much it would cost to actually make these yourself. Like, just the increased effective socket essence alone is like 3 div or 4 div right now. So, yeah. There's your glove. Increased magnitude of damaging ailments is the core that you're going to be using on this. Just make sure it ignites to a bunch more damage. Same thing with the belt, by the way. And that's it for the main gear, except for the offhand staff. This is a very generic staff, just +5 level of all spell skills, mana, cast speed. That's it. The mana helps you cast your curse twice without running out of mana, and cast speed just makes you cast faster. That's literally it. I put dex runes in here because I do have a bunch of dexterity support gems in my offhand. As you can see here, there's this one, there is this one, there's this one, and I was running out of dex, so that helps with the dex requirement. And then we have the flasks. Now, these are super simple. You just want a Blood of the Warrior flask with 30% damage taken, recouped as life. That's max roll, not expensive. Increased duration, also not expensive. No need to quality this. Quality does not matter because the life this gives you is negligible. And then the mana flask, you just want an instant recovery flask. Very important. Instant recovery with reduced charges per use. This lets you spam that flask as you're running out of mana, as I showed in the boss showcase. You want to spam that while your cast all ailments are proc. You don't want to spam it too fast. You want to spam that every single time your mana hits 0. You tap that, mana is 0, tap it, mana is 0, tap it, and then that lets your cast all ailment constantly proc for maximum single target damage. And it's super easy because you're not dodging anything. You're just holding this down and tapping the mana flask button. Super simple. The charms, these are important too, so listen up. You want a Forsaken Bangle because we are very weak against chaos damage, because chaos damage just chunks your ES very fast. So this gives you more chaos res, and it makes all that chaos damage that you're taking, half of it gets recouped as life mana. So you just get a bunch of extra recoup. This basically makes your recoup go from 147 with Flask Up to 150, which is huge. I mean, no, not 150, 200, which is huge. And then the Bleed charm, insanely important charm. You can't avoid this charm because Bleed, because we have damage taken by FSES on the helmet, Bleed gets applied straight to your life bar. This does not affect your ES, it goes straight to life. As you can see up there, bleeding bypasses ES. So if you're bleeding and you're running around, you only have 1440 HP, you will die instantly because damage recoup does not apply to dot damage, and bleed is a dot. So if you bleed and you start running around, you will see how fast you die. So bleed charm important. Third charm, very flexible. You can use the expensive charm here that gives you spirits and rarity. You can use the onslaught charm. You can use whatever. I like using the slow charm. This helps against when you randomly get hit by chill ground or temp chains. or some other annoying slow, because movement speed is already so bad in this game, you don't want to be even slower than you already are. So that's it for the gear, and now let's talk about the passive tree. So passive tree is a little all over the place, but it is with good reason. So most of this tree is fully focused on just as many tankiness nodes as possible, because Incinerate just does so much damage that you don't really need to invest in any damage on the tree, almost. So we have these recoup nodes over here, we have all this ES stuff here, ES stuff here, we have these recoup nodes over here, and speed of recoup is very nice. We have this ES over here, this ES over here, all these recoup nodes over here. We have these nodes over here. This gives us a more ailment threshold and stun threshold, because yeah, we're not using any freeze immunity charms, we're not using any stun immunity charms, we just have a bunch of ES going into our stun threshold and ailment threshold, along with having life applying with the same thing too. So that makes us super potent and strong against those, but we do sometimes get stunned and sometimes get frozen. That's okay, because we just tank right through it. Same thing here, mold ailment and stun threshold. That's it for all the defense stats. Now for the offensive stuff. So for the offense, in our main hand, we have elemental damage, generic elemental damage, elemental res, and then we have a bunch of trigger spell over here with meta skills have 20% increased reservation efficiency. This is what lets you actually use all these supports. If you don't have this on, you will not be able to use it. So very important one there. And then we have all of the crits, all the crit stuff, these crit nodes, these crit nodes, these crit nodes. These are all in weapon set 1, as well as these elemental pen nodes, all weapon set 1. For weapon set 2, we have all of the skill effect duration stuff. We have curse duration, curse magnitude, all that good stuff, because we have all of our curses there. And we also have some chaos damage stuff here, but don't worry, that's not chaos damage. That is still only skill effect duration. That's it. Pretty simple. I don't think that needs to be explained much. It's just every single skill effect duration node that we can take, we are taking, except for this one. This is just a bit too far away and too many points to waste for just 20% extra skill effect duration, because as you saw, we don't really need time freeze to be longer than it currently is anyway, so that's that. Then we have the jewels. So all the jewels are basically the same thing. There's spell damage, ES, recoup, and crit. That's the same thing for every single one. Spell damage, ES, crit, recoup, spell damage, ES, crit, recoup, spell damage, ES, crit, recoup. Now these are super easy to get. You can craft them yourself, get a 3-mod jewel, and then desecrate the 4th one, or just buy 4-mod ones. These are not expensive. People aren't really giving a shit about spell damage combined with recoup, so these are super affordable. Go and get them. We also have the Heart of the Well here. Now this is just the new jewel. Every build will be using some type of Heart of the Well. For this one, the main thing you want to get here is speed of recoup effects. Along with that, just get crit chance, crit damage, gain damage is extra, recoup, all that good stuff, right? But main thing to focus on is speed of recoup and crit. That's it. And that's it for most of the tree. I don't think there's anything else to talk about here. We have the Ascendancy. Now, this is also very straightforward. I don't think this needs to be particularly explained or deep dove into. We have Rapid River. This is what makes the recoup super, super potent on Chronomancer, because recoup generally lasts 8 seconds, and that's garbage. This makes it go down to 4 seconds, and then all the increased speed of recoup stuff makes it go down even further. I think my recoup currently is around 2 seconds with the increased recoup effect boots, and this, as well as the Heart of the Well over here. So pretty damn good. And then we have Apex of the Moment. This is what makes enemies have a 20% slow around us. Now this, again, does not affect white mobs, because white mobs are already getting giga slowed by temp chains, but this affects magics and rares and uniques. So this is still important to take. And then we have Temporal Rift. You already know what that does. And we have Time Freeze. You already know what that does. If you don't want to use this, if you feel like enemies are slow enough anyway, then you can take Sands of Time. This just gives you extra cast speed. Awkwardly, you can take skills don't consume a cooldown for Flameblast, I guess, but I wouldn't recommend it. Just bleh. But that is it for everything. I'm pretty sure I've covered all of it. I've covered the skills, I've covered the gear, I've covered the passive tree, I've covered the jewels, I've covered the ascendancy. If there's anything left and I forgot about it, please make sure to tell me in the comments down below. I answer all of them every single time. No question is a dumb question, so ask me all of them. I will answer all of them. Now we are going to segue into the crafting section, so I will see you there. So there's one thing I know many people are going to ask is, what about BLACKFLAME? Why shouldn't I use BLACKFLAME? Purple flames are super fun, super cool. Well, it's essentially the same thing. If you want to go BLACKFLAME, you can. You just spend a few points over here, go over to BLACKFLAME, and then you will just have a few differences in the skill tree. So you won't be taking these nodes, you won't be taking these nodes, and you won't be taking these nodes up here. Instead, you'll be taking some chaos damage nodes over here, extra damage, wither stuff. You'll be taking this. This will give you some increased movement speed too. So, hey, nice. And you can also take this. This won't affect you because you're not using a chaos skill, you're using a fire skill. So you have a bunch of chaos damage stuff on the tree. You can choose to take whatever the hell you want to take from that. However, you will need to use a withered wand in that case, because you will need a wither on your tree. And also you will have to replace elemental weakness with a despair, which will also make your cast on ailment do less damage for a single target, because again, you're not lowering their curses, you're not lowering their res, so that'll be a little bit weaker for Comet. Living Bomb will still do a chaos damage, that's still completely fine. But overall, if you want to compare the Black Flame stuff to the normal, to the Red Flame that I'm using here, it's honestly the same thing. Like, same damage, same everything, just a different passive tree and different visuals, but everything mostly will just stay the same. You will notice a little bit less single target, but that's it. Before I get into the passive tree, there is one very important thing to mention, and that is going to be the amount of spirit that you need to allocate all of your different auras and everything. So for those, you need a total of 189 spirit. It can be more than that, but it cannot be less. So how will you do that? Well, the easiest way is to get a body armor with an implicit for 30 spirit, and then get the rest of it from your amulet. So this will have to be a solar amulet base with at least tier 2 spirit. Now, if you do have more spirit on your amulet, then you can get by with lower spirit on the body armor implicit, but that's how you will do that. I recommend getting your amulet done first and then buying the body armor based on how much spirit your amulet is giving you. Yeah, remember that? 189 spirits, nothing more. I mean, nothing less, anything more. That's all. While I'm on that note, you also do want to have enough mana in your main hand. Even though you're casting the curse with your offhand, you want to have at least 900 mana, because the first tap with your elemental weakness does still use the mana from your main hand to do it, right? Because the mana in your offhand and main hand don't go up. So if I have 900 mana in my main hand and I swap to my offhand, it doesn't immediately swap me all the way up to 1139. I start at 904. That is why I found the sweet spot to be 900 mana, and I'm getting that only from int. I'm not using any mana on my gear, it's only from int, except for the mana on the implicity, but that's literally like whatever. So 900 is the sweet spot. That allows you to cast the curse twice and exactly be right at 0, and then just, well, that's a bad temporal rift, but hey, you get the point. Okay, before I go over the crafting, I just want to very quickly show the POB for anyone that isn't exactly used to it. So the POB will show you the entire skill tree and how it's supposed to look. Now, and it'll have all the different skills that you have to use over here. So temp chains, all the skill gems, support gems, all that good stuff is in here. So Incinerate, as I said, blindside and mobility are the two that will be swapped in and out. Otherwise, everything else just stays the same. Items, these are all the items. The helmet, there's the helmet swap over there. And the Megalomaniac, Archon of the Flame, will be swapped out with one regular Sapphire Jewel instead. And then the config, you don't really have to worry about this too much. This just shows all the different stuff. I have Archon of the Flame enabled here to show how much single target boss damage we'll be doing overall. Crit weakness, max stacks, enemy is cursed, blinded, Sigil of Power Stage 4, always on full ES because the boss will never hit us. Arcane Surge, crit, channeling, all that stuff. So, about the tree, if you are not level 93 yet, what are you supposed to do? If you hear my cat in the background, I apologize, he's being fussy. But what should you do if you are not level 93 yet? Well, just drop damage. Just straight up drop the damage, drop the crit stuff, drop this crit stuff, don't drop this gives you 5 risk. But just drop crit stuff and you should be a-okay because you don't really need that much damage for mapping anyway. If you're still trying to level up, you want to make sure you're as tanky as possible. So drop the crit stuff and you'll be a-okay. I have to change these nodes, my bad. I will fix that in the updated POB. But yeah, these nodes will go away. So I'll fix that. But yeah, that's the general POB. And now we go over to the crafting. Alright, for the wand, you want to go ahead and get yourself a +5 fire spells, magic base with damage gain as extra lightning. Alright, once you have your wand, you want to go ahead and grab a greater essence of sorcery. So this essence is going to guarantee spell damage on the prefix. And we are not trying to make some insane wand here, we're just trying to make a usable wand that is very good and very affordable. After that, you want to use a homogenized exalt, greater exalt, and a dextral exaltation omen to slam 2 mods on the suffix. So we can see here that the +5 fire skills is elemental, fire, and caster, and the only other things that have those modifiers are the prefixes of gain is extra, but we don't care about that because we're trying to slam down 2 suffixes. So for that, the only 2 things you can hit are going to be cast speed or one of the 2 crit chance mods. Now since cast speed has a way higher rating, you are guaranteed to hit cast speed and one of the other crit mods. Now ideally you want to hit crit chance because that's better, but crit damage is also really good. We're happy with both cast speed and one of the 2 crits. So boom. And here we have tier 2 crit damage and tier 3 cast speed. It's perfectly fine. Really simple, really smooth. And now the final step is to just bone the prefix here. It's the only slot that's open. And we go over to the Well of Souls and we hopefully get lucky on the unveil. So let's see. Here we are at the Well of Souls. You want to run along and ignore the creepy uncle trying to convince you to jump into the basement with him. Go open the Well of Souls UI. Now one thing that I forgot, I was supposed to use the Omen of the Liege before applying the bone on the prefix because this guarantees me to hit increased elemental damage using a reroll in case I get unlucky, because I'm trying to hit % fire damage, but that is very hard to hit because you can hit all those other elemental types. So using that omen will basically guarantee that I hit % elemental, even though it's tier 3, it's good enough. Now here I did get super lucky and I hit it anyway, and I hit almost a max roll, so that's really good. But you will use that omen. But that's it, wand is done. Alright, for the focus, you want to go ahead and get yourself a 2-socket magic base. Focus, the suffix mod here does not matter at all. Try to find one with as much fire damage on that prefix, as high as you can on a 2-socket base, and then we can start. Alright, so exactly the same as the wand, we are going to be starting this craft by using a greater essence of sorcery on the base to make the base go from magic to rare with a guaranteed spell damage on the prefix. There's a boom. And now, things get a little bit different. We are going to be using an Omen of Dextral Crystallization with a perfect essence of sorcery to remove that random suffix and guarantee +3 spell skills on that suffix. Pretty simple so far. And now comes the fun homogenizing exalt part. We all love this part. And it's essentially exactly the same as the wand. We're going to be greater exalt slamming, double exalting the suffix to hit cast speed and crit, because the only mods again here are going to be damage, caster, and damage elemental fire, and the gem tags, but none of that matters because we're only guaranteed to hit caster. That's the only thing in the suffixes. You can also hit fire res here if you select elemental or fire, but that's also completely okay. res is actually good because it does make it easier to cap your res in the end if you do hit one resistance here. So you either hit 2 res or you hit 1 caster mod and 1 res mod, or you hit both caster mods. Either way, you're completely happy with the results. So here we go. Make sure you have all your omens selected, and then you slam the exalt. And here I had cast speed and fire res. Now this is different from the focus that I'm using currently on the build, because I actually sold this one. Well, I gave this one away to a friend who needed fire res, and I didn't really need fire res. So I was like, okay, sure, keep that. And then the final step, as you saw, you just bone the prefix and you hope to hit something good. All right, here we are again back at the Well of Souls. Ignore your creepy uncle again. He is very persistent. Now, one thing to note, I am using reroll omens. That is because the base that I bought was 45x, and there's not like an infinite amount of these, so I don't want to brick it. So here we see ES, percent ES. Now, 72% ES is a tier 3 ES. That is pretty good. Now, you should take that, right? So that is going to be the way to do it. Now, I did take Curse Magnitude here because I wanted to try something with the Curse Magnitude stuff. You will not be taking Curse Magnitude. You will take ES. ES is the best in slot. Just take the ES. Be happy with it. That is what you want to take. And then that'll be it. Your shield is done. Go ahead and socket your runes, quality it up, and boom. Okay, so for the amulets, you want to go ahead and get yourself a magic base with spirits. Now, as I mentioned before, you want a combined total of 189 total spirits. So if you can get an amulet that has more spirits than that, great. Try to make sure it has the correct item levels. Item levels for everything will be written in the POB in the notes section, so go take a look at that. Alright, to start off with the Amulet Craft, and by the way, just ignore the fact that the base looks slightly different. I absolutely totally did not mess up the other one. So use a rarity essence to make your item rare with rarity on it, because rarity is nice. And then you use an omen of the black blood, omen of sinister necromancy, and a preserved collarbone to add a prefix bone, which is guaranteed to give you one of the special modifiers. No, uncle, no. And then you want to go ahead and put your amulet in, and now we are fishing for one very specific mod here, and there it is. So the spell damage while on full ES is a Kurgle modifier, and that is the only mod that we want because we want the caster tag here. Now, we could have gone for regular spell damage, but that is very hard to hit on the prefix without using multiple omens. So here, simple, easy, you will always hit this with at least one real omen, unless you're like godly unlucky. So hopefully you're not godly unlucky. But now, the only tags on the item are Kurgle, damage, and caster. Rarity has no tag, Spirit has no tag, so the only thing that has a tag is going to be crit damage bonus and spell skills. Nothing else, right? Or cast speed, sure. So here, the thing that you want to note is very important is that we want to hit level of all spell skills +3. Right? And you can only get that by using a perfect exalt, because perfect exalt gives you a modifier level above 50. So that is going to be tier 1 cast speed and +3 level of all spell skills. Those are going to be the two that are guaranteed to hit with a perfect exalt. You can't hit anything else. It's always going to be that. So homogenizing greater suffix exalt, boom. +3 spell skills and tier 1 cast speed. Easy peasy, your suffixes are now done. Now, there is the extra step here. You will be using a fracturing orb on this base to be able to use the damage taken recouped as life essence. Only and only if you fracture the level of all spell skills. If you do not fracture the level of all spell skills, I do not recommend going for the 1 in 3 random YOLO, because these bases, as you saw, the perfect exalt, the base itself, it's not super cheap. So don't do this. So here I did hit the level of all spell skills, so that's super nice. I can, in the end, slam the perfect essence and have damage taken recoup on my suffix. Alright, so to finish your amulet, it's pretty simple. So you just grab a greater exalt, and you can either homogenizing this to hit spell damage, or you can just YOLO it and try to go for one of the percent ES or life or mana. I literally wanted to hit anything except evasion or armor. I hit evasion. Sucks, but it's whatever. Now, Essence of Hysteria is the one you use to get damage taken recoup as life. These are not cheap at all, so only use this if you really want the extra recoup, although I wouldn't recommend it. The build is already tanky enough without this mod on it, so just ignore it. But if you do want to have like perfect immortality, then use it. For the Anoint, you can use Melting Flames here. I tested this out. It is good for single target, but then again, the build has so much damage so you don't even need it, so just go for the Anoint that's going to be in the POB. Alright, so that is it for the Immortal Incinerate Chronomancer. I hope you guys find this build to be as much fun and unique as I did. If you have any questions, again, leave them in the comments. If you have any feedback or suggestions about the build, please leave that in the comments as well. And that's it. And that is all. If you like the video, like it. If you dislike it, dislike it. But that's all, and bye-bye.